for his response to the budget. I'm joined by Opposition Leader Tony Abbott. Mr Abbott, good morning to you.
Morning, Kochi.
Government has promised to balance the budget in 3 years. What do you reckon? Could you do that?
Well, they promised that last year. In fact, last year they said this year would be in surplus. There's no surplus this year, no surplus next year, no surplus the year after that. There will never be a surplus, never be an honest surplus under this government.
OK, when could you get it back into surplus if you were in government?
Well, we will get it back into surplus as quickly as possible, should we win the election. But this government has given us deficits stretching out as far as the eye can see.
But how many years would it take you? You've seen the budget papers. On those Treasury figures, how long would it take you?
Well, the government's had 12 months to put a budget together. We've had less than 12 hours to analyse it.
So you're not putting a time limit on it?
We're not putting a time on it now, but we are going to get the budget back to surplus as quickly as possible. Wayne Swan was right last year when he said that a surplus is a badge of good economic management.
Okay.
The tragedy for our country is that we haven't had good economic management.
You can't put a timetable on it. It's a weird budget because if the polls are right, it's absolutely irrelevant. It will only be valid for 3 months until you get elected. Your budget reply tomorrow night is probably more important than the budget. So let's take you through a few of the things last night. Wayne Swan axed the baby bonus. It's going to be replaced with a boost to the family tax benefit, allowing $2,000 for the first child, $1,000 for each extra child. Will you bring the baby bonus back?
Well, what we don't like is broken promises. Now, the current government promised not to touch the baby bonus, and it's been fiddling with the baby bonus ever since it got in, and now the thing's abolished. They abolished the family tax benefit Part A increase that was that was in last year's budget. They abolished tax cuts that were in last year's budget. If you couldn't trust last year's budget, why should anyone trust this year's budget?
Will you bring the baby bonus back?
We're going to carefully study it, Kochi. We are not going to engage in the kind of knee-jerk reaction that this government engages in all the time. Last night's budget was a budget for politics, not a budget for economic management.
OK, you've had time to think about this, the whole Gonski report, the recommendations, the education funding. New South Wales has already signed up. Will you keep the deal?
Well, we don't know what the deal is.
We do.
No, we don't. We don't know, Kochi.
Farrell knows what the deal is.
And it is thus far a deal which is entirely private between the Prime Minister and the Premier. Now, we are not going to sign up to anything that we don't know. We are certainly not.
You haven't rung your mate Barry O'Farrell and said he's in the next electorate to you. So Barry, what's the details?
But Kochi, we aren't going to sign up to something that we aren't convinced is a good deal. And how can we be convinced until we have the details?
All right, $24 billion for roads and transport upgrades. Will you keep that?
Well, again, smoke and mirrors. The money for WestConnex doesn't start for 5 years, and in any event, it's conditional on there being no toll, and the state government says there has to be a toll if the whole thing's going to work. So, look, this was an essentially dishonest budget from an essentially dishonest government.
But I suppose what voters are saying and thinking at the moment is, well, it's not going to last long. What are you going to keep? What are you going to throw out?
Well, we've said that we will provide $1.5 billion to make sure WestConnex is underway within 12 months of a change of government. $1.5 billion to ensure that the East-West link in Melbourne is underway within 18 months of a change of government. $1 billion in Brisbane for the Gateway motorway upgrade. We'll get the Pacific Highway fully duplicated by the end of the decade. We've made a series of affordable, achievable commitments, and we will deliver on them.
OK, but as far as the big things last night, the baby bonus and education, you're going to review it?
Well, we are certainly committed to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Very much committed to that. But, again, the government hasn't told us where the money's coming from, and it hasn't told us what the scheme is actually going to cover.
Going to look forward to the budget reply tomorrow night. Tony, good to see you.
Thanks, Kochi.